I am continuing to talk this morning on a topic that Nelly and I started yesterday. And I'm going to explore the phrase affective polarization, AFFECTIVE, affective polarization, because this is what the article talked about, podcast from Tanya Israel, and she's a professor of counseling psychology at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And so I'm going to break down the phrase and look at each word, effective, because it's a clinical sounding word, but it's really experience related to our moods, to our feelings, to our emotions, to our attitudes. And this is an interesting topic in Buddhism because we delve into not only your emotions, but a broad category of your tenor and tone of the feelings that you have. We even talk about them in broad categories, broad strokes of are they pleasant or unpleasant, or are they maybe neutral or absent? So we're really trying to catch our emotional experience, but how we're experiencing those emotions. And in the Satipatthana Sutta, which is a Buddhist discourse on sati, which is mindfulness or awareness, there's an entire section and a huge list of moods and feelings and attitudes that we can examine within our experience. But the point I want to make on this is that in reflective meditation, we encourage you to meditate with your affective experiences. You don't have to stop them and get back to the breath, though you can do that if you want to. You don't have to interrupt your emotional experiences to get to a certain kind of meditating. That we really have an intention behind our instructions to sit with your moods, feelings, thoughts, etc. And that is to become more aware and to become more aware of how you're aware. So this is a bit of a mouthful of becoming aware of how you're aware. So, and we're really taking emotions, feelings, attitudes into Buddha Dharma, not just into where they're often, subject to in psychology or a therapist. Like that's the place that you talk about emotions. We're actually seeing that within the realm of Buddha Dharma. And in a TV series I was watching recently where the bad guy gets a therapist, they have the therapist ask this question: how does that make you feel? And the therapist asks this many times throughout the session, and I kind of groan and to hear this portrayal of how does that make you feel. Yet we're doing something kind of similar in reflective meditation, and I'll give you an example. Not exactly like that, but something similar. So imagine or consider when you're feeling really angry at a person or an event in your life, and in meditation, you get to tell this person all the reasons you're angry. We don't actually stop you to go back to the breath. You get to go into that list. And it starts to make you angrier because you thought it was a short list. And actually, it's longer than you thought. And you're only going back a few years. And this is, it's really like, oh, there's a lot of reasons to be angry here. And I'm kind of drawing this out because this is what can happen in meditation. All of this can confirm that you're upset and you're angry. And what's the use of going into this anyway? Well, we might ask you a question afterwards. Not how did you feel about that, but we might ask, how was that for you? How were you with that? And often the first response I hear from somebody is, duh, I was angry. Didn't you hear me? You weren't listening to me. But what we're trying to get on is, on reflection, you might be able to see other things, like, I'm afraid of my anger. and I really don't know how to express it. And suddenly there's this long list of things, and I'm not gonna know how to handle this when I meet with the other person. Or you might see, I wasn't so clear on all the details of why I was angry. And now I actually feel more centered and grounded because I know more about my anger and the situations that it's directed to. Or you might think, I don't need to do that again. I've already gone over that list. I know it really well. I really would like to move on to something more positive. And that this field of awareness just got bigger by you learning more, sitting more, being with one of the poisons, anger, as we talked about yesterday. So now I'm going to shift over to polarization, because this is creating division. And division is created. We divide things up and create systems, and often are saying things are right and things are wrong within these divisions, even unconsciously. It's just a normal habit that we have. I remember the first time I had a pizza cut into squares rather than triangles, and it was just wrong. I mean, really, it felt like I can't eat this pizza, but we need to cut pizza to eat it. So dividing things up into categories, putting things in their place, naming them so we know how to relate to them. This is a functional thing that we have to do to live in this world. But it's interesting that when the dividing line is drawn, we often lose interest in the other person, what's on the other side of that line, the other view, the other way of being. We also lose empathy. And we need empathy to understand other points of view, what's on the other side of the line of our division, the other parts of ourselves that don't feel like us, that aren't our typical character, or we disown them because we don't know that much about them, the ways that we act when we're upset and angry at others. So Tanya goes into a study about empathy, which I thought was very interesting, because she says if you're predisposed to being an empathetic person, you will often feel a lot of empathy for the things that you relate to, or you understand, or the things that are like you, or that your own views. And you'll often feel that way because you want to protect those people, those parts from other harm that could be done when other views are expressed, when when the other side starts to impose on those views. And empathy in this respect, from the study, it was surprising to find that most people that are empathetic will be more empathetic towards what they know and like, and less empathetic towards what's different. So in the podcast, she brings in that empathy can't act alone. It has to be paired with equanimity, with courage, that it takes courage to extend our empathy beyond what we think is right, or certain right. So courage is a French word meaning heart, cœur, heart, and really having the heart to take off the armor that defends us and look at other points of view, that this really sets us up to be able to navigate challenges of polarity, of polarization, and that it's a viable way to meet our experience. Not always, though. And this is where we're trying to make some distinctions and nuances for ourselves, for where we fit into the larger world, and how we actually want to show up when there's difficulty. So I have a new kind of aspirational hero. It was from an interview with Tilda Swinton, and she's marketing one of her new movies called The Other Room. And she's talking and has a large press and people there, and a group of protesters comes into her meeting and starts to really take over the interview. And what she does is she invites them in and gives them the microphone and actually says, okay, if you want to say something, we're here, we'll listen. I'll give you, 15 minutes, go for it. Now, the protesters were masked in this case, and she's also from Scotland, from a different country where they're not armed, people aren't carrying guns. So there's other circumstances, and that's why I say this is an aspirational scenario, but to actually listen to and allow the protesters in to what you're saying and to your time, and that it's not so interruptive all the time. It actually is something that we can learn from. It was interesting. The title of her film is The Other Room. And she says, the other room is really close to us. It's not so far away anymore. And that really, if we want to hear more about what's going on in the other room, we have to invite those people in. Okay, so I'm going to stop my Dharma talk there. I've gone over a little bit, but I'm going to make two